Very good. So first thing I wanted to do is to tell everyone we really appreciate your being on the webinar. We've got right now, the numbers are moving up. It's close to 150 people, and I'm sure there are more because there were a lot more registered. So I wanted to give Bill a chance to get right into this. And so, Bill, let me turn it over to you to just give some opening remarks.
Thanks, Fred. I appreciate it. Again, as Fred just said, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. I know on a weekday evening, only days before Christmas, the fact that you would carve out this time means that this information is important to you. And I talk to so many of you on a regular basis, and I know how important it is for you to have the tools that you need to succeed. So my mission tonight, as it is in all of my voiceover coaching, is to really empower you by giving you the knowledge, the information, the inspiration you need to make things move forward. For those of you who may not, maybe you saw something posted on Facebook, maybe a friend had shared this, and you really don't know me from Adam, and maybe it's appropriate to take just a moment to introduce myself. My name is Bill DeWeese. I am a working voiceover talent as well as a voiceover coach. I record voiceovers for a living on a full-time basis, have for the past 8 years. I've been involved in media, broadcast media, for over 30 years now. And for most of those 30 years, at least my involvement in the media side, I've coached hundreds, if not thousands, of talent in radio, television, as well as voiceovers. So my passion is not just working behind the mic. It's helping people to equip them with the tools to be successful. And I can look back over the past 30 years, and there's a lot of people now working in radio and television and in voiceovers that I've had the privilege to help along the way. So it's my privilege to help you tonight, just to maybe further kind of build my resume so that you know that I do know of what I speak. I said I do this full time. Some of the folks that I've recorded for, most recently, I'm the voice of the global signature voice for the Chevrolet Find New Roads advertising campaign. I've also recorded voiceovers for American Express, Whirlpool, and Sears, and Simon & Schuster, and Adidas, and John Deere, Microsoft, Dell, Accenture, and I can't even remember them all. I'm thousands and thousands. Whole bunch more. So the point is, I do this a lot. I record full-time every day as well as coach. And so, and I'm also a former college professor and marketing consultant. So I understand a little bit about how the market operates, and I want to equip you with the information tonight to help you move forward with your voiceover career in 2014. So there's my introduction, Fred.
Excellent. So now we should tell everyone that one of the reasons why we're doing this is we have an event coming up in February. All of you should take a look when you get a chance at voiceoverrevolution.com. If you like what you hear and see on this webinar, you're going to love taking a trip to Las Vegas. Bring your sweetheart and come right around Valentine's Day, because it'll be the 15th and the 16th of February. So, Bill, okay, on that note, let me just let people know that what we're going to be doing is going through a lot of information in a very short period of time. I will be interrupting Bill on occasion to ask him questions, and at the end, we'll have plenty of time for you to ask questions using the little question screen on the GoToWebinar control panel. But for right now, Bill, so if there are 4 new business principles every voice talent must know, what's the first one? Okay,
well, if I may, before I get into that, I just have a few things I do want to mention, I think, to kind of set the table, so to speak, and that is,
okay.
I have good news and bad news, and the bad news is if you don't know, if you are not in tune with the things that we're about to talk about, you are going to struggle in the years to come. And I'm not just talking about new voice talent. I wish that everybody on this webinar could sit in my office and in my studio and be able to be a fly on the wall to hear the conversations I have. I think a lot of people have the perception that I only work with new talent. The reality is I talk and work with a lot of talent at a lot of different levels, including people who have done this for years, have been very successful, are represented by some of the biggest names in terms of agencies in the business, TMD, Atlas, Abrams, and Associates, people who say, I used to work and I don't know why I'm not working anymore. And it's because the business landscape in general has changed. And the bad news is if you don't understand how it's changed, then you will increasingly find your business eroding in the years to come. And if you're just starting, you'll never get a foothold. The good news is because of all of these changes that I've just alluded to, there are more opportunities than ever before. And perhaps it's just that you don't know where to look or how to strategically go about finding those. So I'm glad you're here because the reality is now you'll be equipped to take advantage of the changes that are happening. My strategy here is to empower you to think strategically. And let me explain this. I know a lot of people come to webinars, workshops, and such, looking for tell me what to do. And I do a lot of that. When you come to my workshops, I give you specific strategies on what to do. But what I want to empower you with tonight, and we'll talk about specific strategies, but I want you to understand what's going on so that you can begin to make great decisions on your own, so that you're not dependent on me or on another guru to tell you what to do, that you will understand what's happening so that you can begin to make really wise business decisions. Because the reality is, and Fred, I'm sure you know this, there are, as the old saying goes, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. And there's not just one way to do this, but there are only so many principles at play here. And if you understand them, then you can begin to make wise decisions. And also, I want to help dispel another myth, and that is that I don't talk just about marketing. And I think I'm known more for, talking about marketing and business strategy. What the market is doing also affects what you do behind the microphone. And if you don't understand what's happening in the marketplace, then you won't be able to adjust behind the microphone to speak to today's consumer. And that's who we're talking to behind the microphone. The primary driver of all we're about to talk about is technology. Technology, for the most part, is the thing that has changed everything that we're about to talk about. And the good news is this. We talked about this upcoming workshop, VoiceOver Revolution. The power is in your hands. So if you remember nothing else, remember this. You now have at your disposal, like never before in the history of mankind, the tools, the information, and the knowledge to do what you want to do. And as it pertains to voiceover, to really carve out the career that you want and that you deserve. So with that being said, back to your question, Fred, what is the number one principle? And that is this. This is the age of the deal. Let me explain. And Fred, knowing Fred, I know he loves this one. It's the age of the deal. Nobody pays, or very few people pay, retail anymore. It's post 9/11, post 2008. It's a new economy. Things have changed, and we know this to be true from a consumer standpoint. We understand that retailers are working hard to reduce prices to attract us. Everybody's operating on razor-thin margins. The competition is fierce, and price has played an important role in what's happening out there. But this,
quick interruption.
Yeah,
I don't see a different screen coming in here.
That's because sometimes I get caught up and I forget to hit the button.
Okay, here you go. There you go. So
I'm 3 screens behind already.
Yeah.
Thank you. The age of the deal. Here we go. This is not just a retail consumer kind of thing. This has worked its way through every aspect of business. There is accountability like never before for every dollar that is spent. That includes advertising, which means commercials. It means training within companies and corporations. So we're talking about e-learning. I mean, this affects everything that we do. So there's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of debate within the industry about the lowering of rates. I just want you to understand that that's not a random thing. That one day somebody said, "Hey, let's charge less for doing voiceovers." The reality is, almost everybody. I mean, there are still some players out there. For instance, when I was hired to do the Chevrolet, even when I was hired to do the Chevrolet thing, there was negotiating that took place between my agent and between Chevrolet on a rate because they, nobody wants to pay retail, right? Even though they paid really well, they negotiated for the best price. But more and more companies are looking for a deal even when it comes to voiceovers. So that's something that you have to understand. So getting frustrated and getting angry and pointing fingers at voiceover talent and newbies who are underpricing the market. And sure, there are a lot of people because of technology. There's a lot of people in the marketplace, and there's a lot of competition, and which lowers the rate, generally speaking, at which people are charging for voiceovers. But it's because of the economy as well as with what's happened to the industry with this influx of talent. Another thing that drives this price issue, this deal issue, is the fact that our market has become commoditized, meaning there's a lot of us to choose from. Whenever you have a lot of products within any market, the more choices you have, the easier it is for a consumer or a buyer, a purchaser to say, instead of having product A, I'll take product B. Well, in our industry, it's very easy for a client to say, well, I've got talent A, B, C, D, E, F, all the way through Z to choose from. And so it's not so hard to say, well, you're charging a little bit more than this guy. So, and not that every deal is made on price alone. There are obviously a lot of variables involved. But when people are responsible for dollars and dollars spent, including advertising, including training, including marketing, then you better believe that comes into play. And just to illustrate that a little more, I was hired a while back to do a national ad. It was for Shaun White Snowboarders. You may be familiar with that video game franchise, Shaun White, the popular.
I love Shaun.
You love Shaun. The big
He's
red
got a lot
hair.
more hair than I do.
Yeah, and it's a lot more red than yours too.
Yes.
He's put out a series of video games, and one year I was hired to record the TV commercials for the Shaun White Snowboarders game. But here's what's really interesting about it. I was hired to do that job, not through one of my 16 agents. I was hired through Craigslist.
Craigslist?
Through Craigslist.
Hello?
Yeah. Is that not a shock?
Yeah, I mean, it is to most people out there. Now that I know a little bit about the business through you, I know how you've done things. But for most people on this webinar, I'm sure they're shocked.
And it's because, there's more accounting for marketing dollars that are being spent. And so instead of going through an agency, through the more traditional channels, instead of looking for a union talent, which again would have put a higher premium on the dollar spent, they took it to Craigslist. And I mean, it was a $1,000 job instead of a $10,000 job. But my point is this. There's a lot of those out there, but you have to look for them through untraditional channels, and you have to have some flexibility in saying, okay, maybe a few years ago, maybe I'd have been paid $5,000 or $10,000 for that, but you know what? Now there's like tens of thousands of voiceover talent in the marketplace, and now the going rate for this is $1,000. So, are you going to spend the 15 minutes to make the $1,000 or not? I mean, that's a choice you have to make. And if you don't want to, that's this is your business. This is your career. You can choose to do that. But by you choosing not to or by being angry about it doesn't change the fact that there's a principle at play. There was a great...
Bill, I've got to interrupt you here. This brings up something that I know that most people here tonight are probably... they're probably a little bit confused. I know that your numbers are close to $250,000 in voiceover work in this year, and I know that a lot of that comes in through smaller jobs that you do, as opposed to going after and trying to get agents to land you these big major contracts. Yeah. Why do you think that makes more sense?
Well, the way I look at it, it's like if you understand mutual funds and how mutual funds operate, and that it's a kind of like throwing a bunch of different stocks in a basket and trusting the law of averages to work in your favor. It's kind of the same way. That's the way I manage my voiceover business. So instead of only going for the high-ticket jobs, and by the way, Fred, that's the reason I get calls from people who are represented by the biggest agents in the country who say, I'm not working. Or I haven't worked in 2 years and I've got to get another job because I cannot support myself. It's because there's not enough work to support them from big job to big job. Well, what if your business plan called for you not only having agents, and you should have agents. I mean, like some of these jobs that I have, great paying jobs, I would never have except through the help of my agents. But in addition to that, why not go where more and more clients are looking for voiceover talent. Places like Craigslist, for instance. And these are just a few examples, but the pay-to-play sites like Voices.com and Voice123. Why not market directly to production companies? And why not take, let me give you a for instance. I've got a client right now. I've got a handful of clients that give me work on a weekly basis. Some of them almost a daily basis, and the rate at which they pay me is not extremely competitive on let's say a per unit for every job or for every finished minute of narration that I do. But they give me so much of it that I make tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars from these clients a year, and so. To me, that's smart business. And so if I hold out for the big deal, I'm screwed.
It seems like to me that one of the things that's changed in the model here, as opposed to getting, 4 or 5 big jobs a year, the model is now to use the big jobs almost as a bonus check. So the Chevrolet job you're doing a lot of smaller jobs, doing plenty of them every day. And then when you land the big job, it's almost like receiving a bonus.
It really is, because the great thing was, Fred, I didn't need that money. And let me explain that. I mean, I was very grateful for that money. I wanted that money, but I wasn't depending on that because I had a business plan in place that gives me a very consistent. You'd be shocked at Fred knows, but I mean, if you knew me and hung out with me, you'd be shocked at how consistent my income is. There are no surprises. Very few, rarely are there any surprises to me. So when something like that comes along, the big payday, it was like Christmas times 20. I mean, it was huge.
It sounds good. Let's keep moving then. Tell us what principle number 2 is. Is that our
principle
next
number? And it is. And there we go. Let me forward to it. And that is the traditional channels of content delivery, sales, marketing, and distribution are losing power. And this really it kind of comes out of what we were just talking about. And when I talked about clients, instead of casting only through agencies, are now casting through directly. They're going direct to the end user. So these traditional channels, every industry, if you think about it, every industry has a gatekeeper. There's almost a middleman or woman for every industry out there. The gatekeepers traditionally for the voiceover business have been agencies, number one, and unions. Those two. And by the way, what I'm about to say is it's not anti-agency, anti-union. Everybody, serves a role, but here's the reality. You can fight against it if you want. You may not like it, and if you've built a career this way, then this is the bad news for you. But your agent is losing his or her power. Your union is losing its power. That's why the two major, unions, SAG and AFTRA, they recently came together and joined hands. Because alone they were losing power. So they're trying to survive too. And again, that's not to say that they don't have a place. I'm just saying as business people, and please look at yourself as a business person, otherwise you won't survive. You have to understand that these people that we have traditionally counted on, these are the gatekeepers. The only way we got to Mecca, where we wanted to go, was to walk through those gates. Well, you no longer. Go ahead.
Bill, I see this as very analogous to, I do, a lot of book publishing and writing of books and publishing.
Yes.
And getting it out there. I think it's very analogous in that, now you no longer have to go to an agent to try and get a big publishing company. People are going direct via Amazon, Kindleizing their books, et cetera, et cetera. Very similar,
It's
right?
exactly the same thing. And let me throw another example out. If nothing we're saying is clicking yet, think about, it used to be, I remember when I was a kid, if you wanted to watch TV, you watched ABC, CBS, or NBC. And they held the power. They were the gatekeepers. If you wanted programming, content to get to the masses, that's how you did it. Well, today, you start a YouTube channel. The fact that I can do what I do through YouTube just is absolutely mind-boggling to me, that I've completely gone around traditional channels. And so those power structures, whatever industry, whether it's the publishing industry, whether it's broadcasting, or in our case, voiceover, those traditional channels, they're crumbling. In the initial email that I sent out to promote this webinar, I mentioned Beyonce, who just came out with a new album a week ago. It'll be a week ago this coming Friday, I believe it was. And there was no pre-announcement of the release. She did not use the traditional marketing channels and promotional channels to promote it. She actually, the day she announced it the day it was released through social media. And what happened? She sold 400,000 units within the first 3 days. And she's probably number one right now on iTunes. I know it was predicted that she would be, and I haven't looked at the latest stats. Everything's flipped upside down now, and it has. But here's the point: it has an impact on you. Most people look at stuff like that and think, "Oh, that's interesting." Beyonce didn't even mention it today, until the day it was released. Well, it's not. It's not happenstance, and it has an impact on you. It definitely, this is all relevant to what we do as voiceover talent. So I just want to open your eyes to that so that you can begin to make wise decisions based on that. So, Fred, let's move on to principle 3, and that is the traditional power structure has changed and created a trickle-down effect. Okay, well, we've established that the traditional power structure has been, if it's not been blown away, it's been seriously maimed and crippled and not as strong as it has been. But what does this have to do with me as a voiceover talent behind the microphone? It has a lot to do. It's more than just marketing. If you think back to when, and Fred, we're close to the same age. You think back to when we were kids and you're watching TV, you listen to the radio. What do the voices sound like that you hear coming out of the speaker?
Like announcers.
That's right. They were big and they were powerful and they were strong. Because that all came from this more military/authoritarian mindset that we grew up in, especially I think here in the United States during that era. Our fathers, most of them served in the military and came through that kind of an experience. And it was a military authoritarian paradigm, and that's how the world was seen. And that's why people spoke at us through media. They didn't talk to us. They didn't try to relate to us. They spoke at us in these big, powerful, authoritative type voices. Well, and I'm not saying there are no announcers today, but what I'm saying is that role has been marginalized in media because nowadays, and of course it all began in the 60s, but and if you're a little bit older now and have kids or grandkids, you understand that if you're 30 or under, it's all about authenticity. It's all about being real, and it's about being relatable. And if you are stuck in that old paradigm behind the microphone, then you are dead in the water because you can't connect with people. And as a voice talent, on the creative side, on the performance side, you have to understand what's happening in our culture, which has a lot to do with technology, going back to my earlier statements. But you have to understand that, again, generally speaking, most people will relate to you based on your ability to connect with them. By understanding what you're trying to accomplish, by understanding the emotion that comes from a script, by relating to people on their level. And I hope that sinks in because this is one of the things every day when I'm working with talent and coaching them, it's one of the hardest things for them to let go. This need to perform, this need to be professional, this need to speak at people. It's almost subconscious. It's so ingrained into your psyche thinking that when I get behind a microphone, I must speak at people. You may not process it that way, but that's the way it manifests itself. And it's all about relating.
Yeah, and if you like what you're hearing right now, folks, again, when you get a chance, check on voiceoverrevolution.com for the event that we're having in February. Voiceoverrevolution.com is sort of going to be, we're sort of helping to advance that cause here tonight as well. Okay, Bill, so are we done with principle number 3 or is there more?
No, that's it. And let me just add on to what you said. In Las Vegas, we're really going to flesh a lot of this out. Of course, we have limited time. I can't do a 2-day workshop in an hour or an hour and a half, but we'll put meat on the bones during that time. So principle 4 is media proliferation. Media has exploded. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it used to be if you're watching TV, if you're a kid in the 60s or 70s, it was ABC, NBC, CBS. Well, you move into the 80s, and I was working in broadcasting. Radio stations were popping up everywhere. A lot of this consolidation has been going on. I coach a lot of people who have been the victims of consolidation, have been, downsized in their broadcast media jobs. But beyond that, the technology now, everybody's a content producer. which is it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it really is nothing short of a revolution. The fact that we can communicate so easily and almost effortlessly with people. And it used to be only those companies and organizations with fat wallets and big budgets could create media, be it broadcast media or more the industrial type film and video, which required voiceover narration. Well, today there is so much media. Everybody, anybody can afford a commercial or a corporate video, or they're doing marketing via YouTube or Vimeo or other social media outlets. And any kid with a computer in his basement, will have Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro or iMovie and is creating professional level content. And as I mentioned earlier, YouTube. It's the good news is it's opened up a multitude of opportunities for those of us who record. So there are so many more opportunities. Now, granted, they all don't pay top dollar, going back to what we were talking about earlier, because there are more of us and there are more, it's at every different price point imaginable. But there is so much out there that I want to encourage you that it will only get bigger. There will only be more opportunities. So, with YouTube and everything, the channels are multiplying rapidly, as well as are the opportunities for you to create voiceovers.
Let me just jump in here. Buddy Hatton is asking a question about the Vegas dates. He says that he can't make those. Or is there any way that he can get that stuff online?
Well, what we are going to do, I'm going to videotape those 2 days. And so we will have that turned into a video program that you'll be able to access online. I'm very excited to do that. And again, because of media proliferation, we can easily create this media, make it available to you. So it's a beautiful thing.
Now, Bill, there's another question here. And again, folks, I'm sorry I will not be able to get to all of your questions. I'm just selectively grabbing a few. Anthony Pacelli asks, so, Bill, how picky are you with the smaller jobs? Or is there an amount you won't work for? I can answer that, no.
Well, let me kind of defend myself a little bit here. There are some variables involved. It's not just a matter of price. It's a matter of volume. I have one client, and I won't tell you what the rate is, but I'll tell you it's far below the average. But these guys give me, I will say this, it pays more than audiobook work. And I make a lot of money every month from this client. Because on the totem pole of dollars that you make in voiceover, voiceover is the easiest work to get, but it's ranked towards the bottom in terms of what you get paid for the time that you put in. That being said, I've recorded 36 audiobooks. I believe in the audiobook industry. As a matter of fact, I've done seminars, and I've got a video series that you can find at Audiobook Success 2, the number 2, Audiobook Success 2. .com. But so it's not just, I think it was Anthony that asked the question. Anthony, it's not just about the dollars. It's about the relationship you can create with a client. And if they're going to shovel boatloads of work your way, it's the Walmart model. High volume, low cost.
Yeah, now Mark Holcomb is asking the question, how do you respond to clients who would rather use voice talent from radio stations because it's free by purchasing a schedule instead of hiring you to do your services?
There's nothing you can do to really fight against that because, again, I come from that background. I understand. The truth is, if you are a voiceover talent with a decent level of skill, you're obviously going to be much better than most local radio talent because that's not in their skill set. It's a different skill set. Advertisers don't, unless they've been properly educated and sold on that, they don't get that. They don't understand that. To them, it's free. So they'll go for that. But I will tell you this, something you can do to help get involved instead of fighting against it, jump into the action. There are a lot of companies out there that now specialize in creating radio and TV commercials in volume, in bulk, for local and regional markets for radio and television. As a matter of fact, I've done a lot of work for those companies over the years, and I've narrowed that work down because it, generally speaking, doesn't pay as well as a lot of other work. But if you can get the one guy that I'm still doing a lot of work for, I'll make upwards of $1,000 a month doing low-cost radio ads. Doing a 30-second commercial takes me a minute or two to do. It takes me no time at all. So I can sit around and do those all day and make a lot of money.
Here's another question from John Knowles. John asks, the announcer voice is still prevalent today, and he understands the paradigm shift would you caution against trying to do both styles, the announcer and the relatable, so as to not weaken your ability to relate?
Yeah, that's a good question. Here's my take on that. I think if you come out of the announcer background, now I come from from a lot of years in broadcasting. I understand very much the announcer, and I can do the announcer very well within a certain style. And I'm hired to do a lot of like car dealership kind of things. I can do a lot of promo work. That's very much in my wheelhouse. But I've also learned I get hired to do a lot of the more relatable. As a matter of fact, I was just booked for a really nice ISDN gig this Friday morning for a national healthcare, Vein Clinics of America, because they like my soft-spoken guy next door. It's very hard to go the other way, though. If you don't have a background in that, to move into that, later in life is very hard to do. I would try to stick, if that's the case, I would stick more with just the relatable person that you already are.
Why don't you talk to people about the fact that you lost the one opportunity to become the WWE or whatever thing?
Why did you have to bring that? One of my greatest failures. I was actually there was an agency in Las Vegas that hired me to do some commercials, and I did. And they said, "Hey, we work with I forget what casino that it is in Las Vegas where they do a lot of the women's professional boxing." And they were looking for a ring announcer. And they said, would you be interested? And I said, yeah, I mean, what the heck? Why not? It's an experience, right? So they asked me to video record an audition. So I did. Long story short, I never heard back from them.
He didn't call you back.
No, we're not all made to do everything.
Absolutely. Win some, lose some. Hey, Joel Smith is asking, what's the best way to get into e-learning narration, one of your wheelhouses there?
Yeah, there's a lot of work out there. Now, here's the thing. There's very few places that you can go to. I mean, there are some. You can Google e-learning, and you will find there are some companies out there. There's a lot of offshore, especially in India, a lot of e-learning. I used to work in the e-learning space before I was into voiceovers, by the way. So this is something I know a little bit about. There's a lot of e-learning creators and providers in India, and some here in the U.S. But you can Google and find those. You can contact them directly. And if you have a professional demo produced, and by the way, if you don't, that's something you can email me at voiceoverexpert@gmail.com, and you'll find it at the website there, voiceovertraining.org, and I can tell you more about that. But you can market directly to them. Also, I found that a lot of the video production and multimedia production companies, they tend to be masters of everything. They do TV commercials, corporate work, and e-learning. So a lot of the multimedia production companies also tend to be e-learning creators, content creators.
Now, by the way, we're getting a lot of questions, and speaking of questions, I cajoled Bill into putting together a program in which he took the top 100 questions. Just briefly tell people what that is and where they can find it.
Oh, yeah. Did you want me to bring up a sample of that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I tell you what, this has been a real labor. Well, it's been a labor of love because I put a lot of time into this program. Let's see here. Let me bring it up here real quick. I get a lot of questions. I would say I get hundreds of questions a month via email from talent all over the world. And unfortunately, I'm just not able to personally respond. I try to respond to as many as I can, but it's just impossible to get to all of them. But I created, Fred thought it'd be a good idea if I put together a top 100 voiceover questions website. So we sifted through, boatloads of email and pulled out just the stuff that was most asked or most important.
And if people can't see the URL there, it's 100voquestions.com.
Yes, 100VO questions. And
as a member of this, if you get involved, you can go through all these anytime you want, 24/7. So I just wanted you to pull it up and show people, like give them an example of one of the questions you covered and an answer, just to show them what it is.
Okay. Let's see.
A short one.
Let's see here. Okay, I'm not sure how long this is, but we can just even give a sample of it.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of it.
So this question is there any voiceover work I can get without having a demo?
And I'll fast forward past the intro here.
Yeah, that's a good question, too.
Okay. Here we go.
I can't hear the audio.
It's not starting yet. Here it comes.
Is there any type of VO work I can do without having a demo?
It was a good idea. But
maybe the audio doesn't actually feed through the system.
We'll We'll can that. So
Okay.
let's just go to some of the audience questions. Folks, if you want to, you can check that out. All the questions are listed on the site in advance, so you don't have to actually do that. This is, sort of going along with Craigslist. Terrence Flowers asks, what are the most unexpected places you found VO work? By the way, that's Bill's house out in the mountains.
That's where I hope to move someday.
So what are the most unexpected places you found VO work other than Craigslist?
Some of the most unexpected. Oh, wow. Actually, in all honesty, Craigslist probably has been the most unexpected.
Somebody at a grocery store ever? Did you ever have that kind of thing?
That's never happened to me. Sometimes I get calls from people. I have no idea where they found me. And I try to always ask, but sometimes I just don't. And sometimes I just get, I get random calls out of nowhere. Or somebody just, stumbles across some work that I did or somebody who knew me but in terms of the strangest, I mean, Craigslist would have to be probably to me the most unexpected. I can't think of like a bizarre incident that's ever happened to me, believe it or not.
Yeah. Okay. So Kimber Turner is asking, are there really very many clients that still want ISDN?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are still quite a few clients that use it. As a matter of fact, as I mentioned, I've just booked a job. Here's the thing. I did a job this morning. I did an ISDN job this morning. I've got another one Friday. It tends to be, when you look at the universe of voiceover work, all the jobs that are out there, the amount that are done over ISDN, high-speed data lines from studio to studio, is probably less than 1%, probably a fraction of a percentage. But if you have an ISDN set up, and it's expensive, it can be thousands to get set up to do that. But if you're at a place where you're competitive enough and you have the proper demos and the proper studio set up and you have agency representation, well, then you can put yourself in that smaller circle to compete for those better paying jobs.
A better question is this. What percentage of your money this year has come from ISDN jobs?
Oh, I'm sure less than 3%.
But it's still worth it for you to have.
Yeah, I definitely make money doing it, but it's not huge because I don't do it. I don't do it every day.
You got it. Lisa Goldsmith is asking, do you see the business opening up more to women? It still seems very male dominated.
That's becoming less and less. I think you're right, Lisa. I think it has been. I don't know that it's 50-50 at this point, but I will tell you this. My experience has been I get quite a few clients asking me, do I know any good female voice talent? So there is a growing demand. And there are times when I think that I could get more work if I was a woman. Because do you know how many, seriously, do you know how many guys out there have mid-range voices like me and sound like me? Yeah. About a gazillion, give or take.
Hey, so Nick, I think it's, Nick, apologize if I get your name wrong, Wyard, W-Y-A-R-D, sorry about that, Nick. How can I determine what fair rates are so that I can negotiate in an informed manner? Good question.
Nick, yeah, this is one of those things where you'll never have a great handle on it. You'll never be comfortable with it because the market is so crazy all over the place. So what I do, and you can certainly, if you were going to go to the SAG-AFTRA website, you can get a sense of what union rates are. And by the way, there are very few clients, again, that are willing to pay retail like that. What I always do, I try to get a sense of where a client is at. So instead of giving a rate, I always say, well, what budget do you have for this project? And well over 90-95% of the time, they will tell me right up front. They'll say, well, we were thinking, $300 or $200. I had a student, I do a voiceover fast track class, which, by the way, I have one coming up in January. Email me about that for more information. But in my last class, I had a student, she's a newscaster in San Francisco, moving into voiceovers. And one night in class, I explained this concept. I said, just next time somebody asks you what your rate is, say, well, what's your budget for the project? And she did, and the rate they quoted her was 3 times what she had planned to ask.
Yeah.
So, at least it gives you a place to negotiate. I know I'm not answering your question specifically because it's nearly impossible. After having done this for years, you get a sense of what clients might pay depending on what the job is. But I always ask them, and then I use that as a starting point.
And by the way, folks, as I said earlier, I apologize in advance. We have over 250 people on this event. We're getting I've got 300 questions in front of me. So if I can't get to yours, I apologize in advance. Samuel Fleming asks, how do you decide which agent to go with?
Well, it's not even so much a matter who you decide to go with as who decides to go with you. because the power really is more in the agent's hand. I mean, what you do, you submit your information to what I do. I submit to a lot of different agents. And let me just share a very quick story just to put this in context so you understand. The very first agency I submitted my demo to after I had a professionally produced demo here in the Chicago, Milwaukee area. And they contacted me back and said, hey, we like your material. We want to represent you. Fred, I could not have been more excited. I thought I had arrived. I thought this is it. And so they invited me into their offices for an orientation. I went. I was there with about 100 other people showed up, voiceover talent, actors, models, the whole 9 yards. For 2 or 3 hours, gave us their spiel, yada, yada, yada. That was 7 years ago. You want to know how many jobs I've had from that agent as of today?
I'm guessing 0.
You're right, 0. I've never had a single job through that agent. So,
unbelievable.
First of all, never think in singular, think in multiple. Never sign with an agent if they offer you a contract that wants you exclusively and not maybe in their market. I mean, for instance, if I had a Las Vegas agent, I would not have multiple agents in Las Vegas. But don't let that keep you from having an agent in Los Angeles, Chicago, or Dallas, or New York. But get multiple agents.
Another question here from Brett Busby. Brett asks, "How do you?" And this, I've lived with you through this question. How do you deal with deadlines when the sometimes inevitable illness like pneumonia or cold strike?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's interesting because today as I sit here, I'm on my second day of an antibiotic and a steroid, trying to fight off a throat infection. It happens. Interestingly, here's been the biggest shock for me. Most of my clients don't care. And I'm not kidding. They don't care. I'll be kind of like this and I'll say, well, it'll sell so great today. And they'll go, you sound great. Go ahead and do it anyhow. 9 times out of 10, I kid you not, that's exactly what happens. So I sit here and I do my thing. But the best defense is a good offense. I mean, taking vitamins, supplements, staying hydrated, those help. But when the inevitable happens, have a doctor who will easily phone in an antibiotic for you. I also have an urgent care, literally within walking distance from my front door. And which is what I did yesterday. I walked in, he gave me a steroid and antibiotic right away, said this will knock it out real fast. So that's how I deal with it.
Bill actually chose his house based on that location.
The Midwest, perfect, yes.
I'm lying. I lie a lot.
That's the joke right there.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'm going to take one from, let's see, Bill Cooper is saying, what about SoundStreak instead of ISDN?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Yes, I mean, the tech. By the way, SoundStreak is just another technology that's emerging to allow you to use the internet, as I understand it. And I'm not a SoundStreak expert, as opposed to ISDN. ISDN uses traditional old 80s technology to deliver data over phone lines to allow you to connect to other studios. It's a dying technology. It's still there. We still use it, but it's dying. Right now, Source Connect is kind of the de facto standard for using, voice over IP for voiceover talent. That's going to be changing over the next, it'll always be in flux because it's technology. It'll constantly be developing. The business models and the pricing models will constantly be changing. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I hope that a standard does, emerge in the next 5 years. I would not invest in anything heavily right now. I don't even have Source Connect at this point, although I do plan on getting it at some point, unless something like SoundStreak, seems to be winning the market share. But right now, I'm sitting back and watching, and I'm not investing in anything right now.
Sounds good. Now, here's another question, and I want to use your example before I let you answer it. Let me say a couple words after the question. Keith Jones is asking, is there still a market for movie trailer voiceovers, or is that a market only for a chosen few? Now, when you say that, Keith, I know because Bill recently told me a story about one of the guys that he recently put together. He does a lot of producing of voiceover talent demos. And Bill, why don't you sort of answer that by giving the example of the guy that you worked with and the Nissan example?
He's on the webinar tonight.
Good.
Yeah, and this is really interesting. You have to think of voiceover work in different tiers. Now, there is a very exclusive club. They all live in Los Angeles, and there's just a handful of them, 3, 4, 5, maybe tops. They get hired for most of the big blockbuster movie voiceover trailers, and they make $2, 3, 4, 5, $6 million a year. It's a very exclusive club. Not to say that you might or you or I might not break into that, but that's definitely a long-term kind of plan. However, there's again a lot more of the movie makers are now going directly to the people. And Tim, who we're talking about, he came to me several months ago, and actually he's a new voiceover talent, but he has extensive studio experience and background as a producer and as an engineer. And so I produced his demo, and within a very short period of time, he landed a movie trailer job for a Mar Vista movie starring Toni Braxton, Twist of Fate. And I don't know if it ever hit theaters. I know it was a movie. I saw it on television, but he was hired to record the trailer for that. So that to say that beyond that exclusive In a World, group in Los Angeles, there is more and more of, direct to DVD and television type stuff, that there's more of that work available. So it's a larger market, and there are opportunities, as Tim demonstrated. I mean, heck, right out of the bat, the guy lands a gig. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Now, you know what, Bill, I'm getting the feeling like people are really enjoying the opportunity to ask you questions. So if you really like this format and want us to do this more often, maybe once a month or so, I may be able to twist Bill's arm to do that. How should they contact you to voice their interest in having this done on a regular basis?
Yeah, great. That would be great. Just email me, and the address is voiceoverexpert@gmail.com. Voiceoverexpert.
Voiceoverexpert@gmail.com to give Bill some feedback on whether you'd like to have this happen on a regular basis. We're doing it, again, one of the things we're doing it is not primarily, but, to help promote the event coming up in Las Vegas. By the way, if you can't make it there yourself, spread the word, let other people know, because Bill's got some great information. Coming from Joshua Mackey. Bill, do you edit and produce your own audiobooks? How many hours per finished hour of audio do you do? Blah, blah, blah. Now, let me just preface this by saying that Bill, Bill didn't realize that slavery was made illegal a while back. He does have his daughter working for him.
Yeah, she helps me out tremendously. Audiobook work, as I said earlier, it's the easiest work to get. I think audiobook work is great. It's great to fill in the downtimes, and it's great for people who are trying to ramp up. If you can get commercial work, take that. But generally speaking, it pays much better. Do I edit and produce? Yes, I edit, produce all my own stuff, with the exception of the last couple of audiobooks that I did, which I was able to get through my New York agent, came with a producer. So,
But my comment about Mallory was, do you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry. No, I no longer do my own editing. Mallory actually does that for me. See, I'm taking credit for something I don't even do.
Is she on the webinar?
No, she's not. No.
Okay, yeah. So good question. So now, again, the question I would ask as a follow-up to that would be, when did you start being in a position to have an assistant so that you could hire someone to help you out like that?
I did about 3 years in. Literally, when I started to develop carpal tunnel from doing so much editing, the mouse clicking, and then that's not a joke. I mean, it was getting so painful because I was editing so much audio. I was working so much. But here's the interesting thing. Within a year or two of hiring her, my income almost doubled, because I was focusing on doing where I was getting paid, recording, and she was taking care of the administrative and all the technical aspects.
Well, that brings up another good question. In the event that I don't have a daughter who's brilliant like Mallory and can do this kind of work, where do I find an assistant?
Craigslist. That's where I would look.
Yep. Agreed. Okay, let's get to some more questions here. I don't want to, everybody's got some great stuff that they want answered here. Okay, so Scott Spalding is asking, what's your opinion of sites like Elance and Odesk and other freelancer sites?
Yeah, I think there are opportunities, and when I talk about marketing, I always talk about the marketing wheel. You don't want one spoke or two spokes in a wheel. You want quite a few spokes. The more spokes, the more stable the ride. The smoother the ride, the more predictable the outcome. And so I think freelance type websites and doing freelance work is it's another spoke in the wheel. Now, most of the stuff that I've seen is pretty low pay. I'm not saying it's all low pay. The truth is, I've got so much going on that I haven't had to focus. I'm not doing anything through that. But I will tell you this: there's a guy that I recently consulted and coached, who actually has done some film work, and he wants to do voiceover work to fill in the between movies when he's doing that kind of work. And I was out of touch with him for several months, and a friend of his who lives in Los Angeles, I was coaching him and working with him, and he said, "Hey, remember such and such?" He said he's making like $80,000 a year now from just working off the freelance sites. So there's clearly some money to be made. using Odesk and freelancer.com. And there's a bunch of those freelance type websites. So, go for it.
Yeah, one of Bill's real specialties is marketing for voiceover talent. And I think that one of the things that makes so much sense to me when you and I first got together and started talking about this is how you need to be using like every single possible avenue of generating business.
Yes.
And that's just another one, so don't exclude anything.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay, let's go to Brian Hunt. His question is, I know it's a numbers game. How many potential contacts should a new voice talent touch daily? In other words, what should be, sort of like if you're a salesman, you got to knock on a certain number of doors to get in the door. What kind of, and again, for you, you may want to give your sort of percentages of sort of repeat business versus new business, but give him an idea of, what he should do if he's starting out, I assume.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, when I first started out, I'm trying to remember, so long ago, I was doing probably between 10 to 20 auditions a day for the pay-to-play sites like Voice123, Voices.com. In addition to that, I was sending out, I would say, at least 20 emails a day and trying to make 5 to 10 phone calls a day to production companies. So I was, that's quite a few opportunities to reach out. If you're doing 10 phone calls, 10 emails, there's 30, another, 10 to 20 auditions. That's a lot of stuff going out on a daily basis.
Okay, and let me see if I can get this name right. Anita Pizzarani. Did I get it right, Anita? I hope so. I'm sorry if I butchered it here. Once one has a demo reel, where do they send it out to as part of their marketing strategy?
Well, there's a number of places, and we've touched on some of those. I think agencies are a good place because I would never limit myself strictly to an agent. If you want to eat and pay your mortgage, but you want to send them to agents for representation. Craigslist, which we spoke of, that is definitely can be a great, if you know how to do it properly, can be a great place to find work. Multimedia production companies, video production companies, that's your biggest pool of prospects, production companies. And you may have to do a lot of digging to find them, but those are the folks that you want to send your demo to, or point them back to your website, really is the best way to do it, and say, I'm a voice talent, listen to my demo. And it is a numbers game. It's sales. Not that you're trying to convince people to buy something from you, but you have to, in the sense that you have to contact a lot of people to get a few people to listen to your demo. And then you get enough people to listen to your demo, and then eventually people start giving you auditions. And from those auditions, you eventually start getting work.
Now, at the event, voiceoverrevolution.com and the event that we're doing here in Las Vegas, 15th and 16th of February, what percentage of the time will be spent on showing and explaining to people the various different marketing methods? Yeah,
I'm taking out it'll be about 25% of the time will be very specific marketing strategy. I'd say a good fourth of the time will be spent on that.
Good. And the other time, the other 75%, what are you doing?
Well, we're going to have a workshop on your home studio, which Tim Tippett, who I refer to as the VO Tech Guru, when I need help with my studio, he's the guy I call. He's a studio pro, and he's going to talk about how to convert your home, a home recording space into a professional recording space. We'll also have another guest, Dave Courvoisier, who's a good friend of yours as well, Fred. He's the he's the CBS anchor out there in Vegas, as well as a very talented voiceover guy, and he'll be talking.
CBS TV anchor.
What? I'm sorry. What's that? Did I say
CBS TV?
TV, right? Yes, yeah. He's the CBS TV anchor, and he'll be talking. He's a social media guru, and he'll be talking about how to utilize, social media. I'm going to be doing a workshop on performing too behind a microphone, because one of the things I think I do as well, or maybe better than most things I do, is helping people go from this natural tendency to want to talk at people and announce at people and perform behind a mic to become very relatable and competitive in auditions. And so I'm going to be doing a big workshop on that, as well as demo, how to do a demo, and really covering all the major bases.
Yeah. Now, going back to questions, Greg Bartley asked the question that will make you smile after you hear it, and it's, you'll know why. This might seem like a silly question, but Mac or PC?
Well, it's funny. You would laugh too if you were in my studio right now. If you're seeing my screen, you're seeing my Mac. But what you may not know is that I also have Windows installed on my Mac through Boot Camp, and that doesn't mean anything to you unless you own a Mac. But I can boot into Windows mode as too. I prefer to record in Windows mode, but I just because my Skype works better on the Mac side, and I do a lot of all my coaching over Skype, that I tend to do more recording in Mac. But truth is, it really doesn't matter. They both work really well.
What was the timing of the purchase of your Mac equipment, Mr.
About the time I met you.
That's why I'm saying that, Greg, because I'm a Mac guy since 1986, an Apple guy.
Yeah, so Fred convinced me I needed to give it a shot, and I love my Mac. I mean, this is actually, I'm working off a MacBook Pro Retina right now with two external monitors.
Another question here. Bill Cooper asks, do you pay for finished hour rate or royalty share?
I'm not. Yeah, that's a good question, and that's for audiobook is what he's referring to. Audiobook work. I'm not a big fan of royalty share. I'll try anything once or twice, and I've done 6 or 7 audiobooks on royalty share. And the reality is, my monthly paycheck for that is about $50 a month. And hey, I'll take it. It's $50 a month, and I get that for the next 7 years without doing any extra work. But I think bottom line numbers are better if you can negotiate a $150 to $200 per finished hour book deal.
Okay, now Kim Simpson is asking, how do you know if your home studio is set up correctly and your beginner's editing skills are suitable enough to offer that to prospective clients?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you really need a professional to hear that, to tell you that. At least, hearing what your recordings sound like. I offer a free consultation to anybody who's looking to get started, and I always give feedback on their demo, their website, and their studio audio if they want. So you can email me, and I'll be glad to do that for you.
Now, again, I may butcher this name, Dean, sorry, is it McAtee? Where's a good place to start if you have zero experience?
My voiceover fast track class, and that may sound, this was not a setup, and I don't mean it to be self-serving, yeah, but that's the truth. I get asked this more than anything else, and that is, where do I start? What do I do? What's my first move? As a result, or in response to that, I created a monthly class. I call it VoiceOver Fast Track. I do it the first 4 Thursday nights of the month. Although in January we're doing it the last 4 Thursdays, taking the first Thursday off because it's still holiday. But I do it in the evening, and we cover 4 major areas, everything from home studio setup to we talk about marketing and demos, and every night we read and I give feedback, and it's all live and in real time, and we can see each other and talk to each other. We use GoToMeeting to do it, and it's pretty cool. And just to email me for information on that, and I'll be glad to help you out.
And Rick Sanchez is asking, hey, Bill, I read your new book. How does your new book differ from the VO Playbook?
Well, I think that book's about 150 pages, and my VO Playbook's about 4 hours of content. So and I don't mean that to be a smart aleck. I mean, there's so much more. The VoiceOver Playbook is very in depth. The book is more general, and I cover what I feel to be the most important aspects, all of the aspects of voiceover. The VoiceOver Playbook is very specifically a marketing strategy. It's a marketing plan. It's my marketing plan, which can be applied to anybody in just about any country to build a highly profitable voiceover business. So in the VoiceOver Playbook, over the course of 4 hours, I go into great detail on how to do everything that you need to do, what to say, who to contact, how to go about doing it, I do videos of online when I'm actually searching for clients, how I find them, how I pan through Craigslist to find the gold, all that kind of stuff. So it's much more detail and in depth.
Now, if I get this name correct, I should win some kind of an award. Derek, and I'm going to go, and Derek, you got to tell me if I got it right. Derek Nabenbauer. You'd see the spelling.
That's a tough
Derek,
one.
if I got that right, I deserve kudos. So, if you were just starting out in voiceover, who is the very first person you would contact after having recorded your demo?
The very first what I would do, if once I have a professional demo, the first thing I'm going to do is go where I have the best chance of getting work. And I would go to Mandy.com. Now, that's not a person, but it's a destination online. Mandy.com is the biggest online directory of video production companies. And from there, I would, without regard to anything, maybe I would start with the United States, but I wouldn't overthink it. A lot of people tend to overthink, well, how do I know whether, well, you don't know. You don't know who's hiring, who's not. That's the whole point of it. You don't know. So I'd begin at the very beginning and I would just start reaching out, sending my demo to everybody.
And Derek tells me I was close. It's Knabenbauer.
All right. Well, kudos to you anyhow.
Close. I thought I was such a genius there, Derek. Okay. Well, look, we've got time for a couple more questions, and then we've got to cut things off. So I'm going to just go here randomly and figure out. Dan Harder is asking, Bill, are you still marketing as aggressively as you did originally?
My marketing it's changed. I'm always marketing, but marketing doesn't mean this exactly the same today as it did 7-8 years ago when I first started. When I first started, it was all about getting new clients. And I still market for new clients. But I would say, whereas before maybe 90% of my time was spent doing that, literally 5 to 10%, if that much, is spent trying to get new clients. Because I've got a big book of business now. So as you grow your business over time, your attention, the marketing becomes not just getting new clients. You always have to get new clients. So that never ends. But you want to take care of the people you already have, and never assume that clients you have will always remember you. That's a fatal mistake that many voiceover talent think that, well, now that I have a client, I don't have to worry about them anymore. You absolutely have to worry about them, because the truth is they forget about you. They may only use you once a year or once every 6 months or whatever the case may be. And trust me, next week they'll be trying to remember what your last name was. So you have to have a marketing plan in place, a marketing communication plan to allow them to remember you. So that's how my marketing has evolved. But I still do the other stuff, just not as much time.
Final question here, and thank you again, Bill, for all the time. And then I'll give you a little time to just wrap things up. Marcia Boone is asking, how do you determine when it's the best time to join SAG-AFTRA?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a really good question. And here's what I by the way, I'm not union. I'm non-union, and I make a good living doing this. And so if I went union tomorrow, I'd be broke. I mean, my income would stop almost immediately. I like being able to deal with anybody that I want to. I like to negotiate my own rates. I don't want somebody doing that for me. I don't want to be told, what the parameters of the deal are. I want to deal with that myself. Now, but that being said, if I knew I could make more money tomorrow going union, I would. But here's what you're dealing with. Once you become union, you are dealing in a completely different marketplace, because the number of clients who will hire union talent is shrinking. That pool is shrinking. The people who are union talent, it's a much more, in non-union, you've got everything from the best of the best to the worst of the worst. It's a really big pool of talent. You've got everybody. In union, it's pretty much all top tier talent. And so you're competing for a very small group of clients and work among a much more competitive group of people, which is why I get calls regularly from people, world-class talent who are represented, like I said, by TMD in Los Angeles, Atlas, Abrams Associates, and they're not working, and they're union, and that's one of the reasons they're not working. And even the people who are successful who are union, and I know this because they tell me this, the work is eroding. It's slowly disappearing and going away. So I would make that decision very carefully, and I don't know that it will ever be a good decision for you. But if you've got somebody knocking down your door saying, I've got tons of union work to give you. I've never heard of that happening, by the way. But if they were to, if that were to open up to you, then by all means, take it. Wherever you can make the most money, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, before you finish up with your final thoughts and let people know about a few different things, I guess Corson Bremer, who is from someplace outside the U.S., says basically, where is your coaching, or do you do coaching for non-U.S. clients?
Hey, Corson. Yeah, I do. Almost all of my coaching is over Skype. Now, when we get into demo, I do a lot of demo production, and believe it or not, most of my clients actually record from their home studios and send me their files, but some travel into my studio. But, 90% of my coaching is done over Skype, and I do it with people all around the world. So I don't coach at 3 a.m., I'll tell you that, but I try to be flexible when I can.
Okay, so why don't you wrap things up and tell people where to go and what to do?
Okay, well, just remember this. it's not the people who are crying the most are within the voiceover industry are people who've been doing this the longest. Everything's changed and they don't understand why. Don't let their frustration or anger discourage you from doing what you know is right. Because if you understand that the power is now in your hands and that you can bypass traditional channels, you can build with the right plan and persistence and, being consistent in what you do, you can build a very nice and it's sustainable business. I'm amazed. I feel like the luckiest guy in the world. Every week, I look at I keep track of all of this, and I just look at all the work that I've done and think, I can't believe that I'm still doing this after 8 years, and it doesn't slow down. It just keeps going and going and going. And so I want you to be equipped to do the same thing. So Fred mentioned this earlier. Let me mention it again. If you can make it out to Las Vegas on February 15th and 16th, it would be awesome. We're going to have a great time. It's all going to be about digging into the nitty-gritty of equipping you with the tools to have a fantastic 2014 so that you'll know the stuff that a lot of people don't know. Not that it's a big secret, but most people just don't, they don't associate the events of the day, the news, with what's happening in their professional lives. But this technology, this new economy, it's just a new set of rules. But if you understand it, you can succeed. And I'd love to see you do great within the voiceover business.
Well, folks, thank you very, very much for being on the webinar, and hope to see you all at some event or talk to you again. And we'll, again, given the response, I have a suspicion that we'll be doing this more in the future. So, Bill, thank you again for doing this, and for everybody who's been on here, again, my thanks, and thanks from Bill DeWeese as well.
Thanks, Fred. Thanks, everyone.